Welcome into this carrier update. I'm Tony Mulvey, joined by Donny Gilbert.
Clark.
Yeah.
Cousin Eddie.
Yeah, we're looking at what's going on in the ocean market. Again, some stability at kind of where we've been for much of the back half of the year.
I mean, we look since the 1st of December, pretty much the 1st of December, and maybe up slightly.
Yeah.
Very slightly, but it's been stable. It's different than normally when it's drifting downward or declining.
Actually, you would have seen the declines in November. In December, actually, you do see an uptick typically because you have to remember this is overseas. Pull aheads for Lunar New Year start to happen in the back half of December. So, I mean, flat is okay, right? It's not.
But we're only so far. We'll start possibly seeing those pull forwards here soon. But this chart is different than what we've seen in past years. Now, the problem is we don't have the peak.
Yeah, right. I mean, we've been up, and then we kind of leveled out in August, and we've been level for much of the rest of the month.
And so I'm not saying that this is better than previous years. It's just that we didn't really have as much of a peak. And it's been drawn out. But this freight here is going to be coming in January, and that might help keep things running a little bit stronger in January if this proceeds. Now, in previous years, this could maybe around where the bottom of their peaks were, but it's just kind of this year's been a little bit different with imports.
Yep.
And we'll see how that affects 2024.
Yeah.
Now, if we go to our imports, that was imports from all ports of the U.S. This is China. China's starting to drift down.
Yeah.
Is that discretionary funds that we have, TVs, electronics, basically. And we were seeing that dropping off already after the 1st of December. These goods, it's going to go back to the goods that are just normal imports and not, the excessive stuff, like what we're buying for Christmas.
Yep.
With that now, if China's declining, but yet we're kind of holding steady.
Means everywhere else is kind of growing, right? Or not everywhere, but other countries are growing in terms of the imports that we're bringing in, right? And we've talked about it a lot. Vietnam, Korea, India have all grown relative to what China has, and in total imports, they're not nearly the size, but they've grown relative to what China has.
And this is different. And part of the reason this is happening, there were, we put import sanctions basically on China. And so they're like, hey, I don't want to pay you the extra 15, 20%. Let's pack up and let's move. Yeah. And they went to places like Japan, Vietnam, Malaysia. They moved their operations to save some of those, taxes because that was a pretty tough tax on them just because they were operating out of China. So if we go in, and we're going to look at one, we're going to look at more here in just a little bit, but this is basically Japan. And here, starting back in before the 1st of December here, we actually see imports start just picking up slightly. Yep. And these are those countries that are filling in for the China decline.
Yeah, and you can go in and look and compare them in actual size, right? Like China still dwarfs most of these. Like it is the largest importer from overseas, right? Canada and Mexico are our top two in the trading partners, China now being, I think, 3rd. But it just has to do more with China coming from overseas. You can bring stuff into Canada and Mexico and then bring it in. And it's just a little different. But you've seen growth, again, in countries like Japan, Vietnam, India, getting outside of solely relying on China.
Some of it could be, as you said, we go China to Japan, we put another part on there, stamp it made Japan, and then bring it over, or Mexico or Canada.
Yeah, so.
We'll look at a couple more here when we come back. We're going to do some imports today, a little bit of rail, and then some lanes of the day.
Awesome stuff. Well, Donnie, thank you so much for this update. We'll be sure to check in with you again a little later. Right now, we'll hand it back over to Kaylee Nix.